So last week we finished up not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured out in our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. That's what we talked about the last couple of weeks, and it's important that we understand that context as we move forward. Today we're going to talk about this phrase, just the right time. I thought it was wonderful that you so shamelessly plugged that early on in your testimony. That was all. I like that. Timing is an interesting thing. Timing matters. Timing matters in how much things matter. If you love football and your team kicks the game-winning field goal in the fourth quarter of the first preseason game, who cares? If your team kicks the field goal to win the Super Bowl, right? You're bragging for at least 6 months over all of your friends. The reality is that timing matters. A great moment is irrelevant, you know. We've all had tremendous moments when it didn't matter, right? Anybody ever done something like that where you're like, oh, I wish that would have mattered right now? I wish, someone watching? Someone see that? No one? You know, I do something like that all the time, you know, like where you're joking around, you're like, I can totally make this shot with, you know, paper wad from like 60 feet, and you're off, nail it, but you know if somebody was there watching, you can miss by 100 feet. So, timing matters. And timing is a huge part of what's going on. And you know, like I said, you know, timing when you hear about things, timing when you know what's going on, timing when you're given a tremendous blessing in the midst of what seems like hopelessness or opportunity missed, maybe might be better suited there. And so Paul uses the words at just the right time in this next verse. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about one verse. We're going to go very Calvary Chapel next one. Hey, good people, Calvary Chaplains. Chapelians. But it's an interesting idea, this idea of timing. Timing is what allows you to play baseball. Timing is what allows you to be somebody who's not seen as a cad, right? And how you say things. Timing is what allows you to surprise somebody if your goal is surprise. Timing is what allows you to be a blessing. You know, when the moment comes to people, you know, when people need to be blessed. Timing is what allows you to deliver something at the moment it's needed as opposed to the moment it's not. All those things. So we have Romans 5:6. So remember what we just talked about: perseverance, character, hope. So Paul says, you see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. At just the right time. Now, an interesting couple of questions that I like to ask about this verse when I first read it is, one, why was now the right time? He says at just the right time. Now, we can, however we choose to contextualize that in our head is going to determine how we understand it. But to me, that's a very important question, is why that time? And then the next question is were we not going to be powerless forever anyway? Right? I mean, we've been powerless since day one. So why then? Why now? Why through that? And in the end, ultimately, how is all of this connected to hope? So when we're looking at timing, and we say just the right time, we have to really identify why it was the right time in order to really understand any of it. Now, we can look at time as chronology. We can look at time as sequential. You know, well, we had reached this point in this way, and before we could go to the next point, this had to happen, so it was the right time. Or we can look at time as an era. Or we can look at time as, you know, mankind had gone far enough, humankind had thrown itself away and screwed everything up and it really needed to get fixed, or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of ways people can contextualize this kind of thing. So as we're sort of trying to figure out how to take all of these ideas and sort of connect to the depth of the concept, it's important, one, that you figure out kind of how you come at it from your context. So the time is right, part one. All right, so Roman rule had created peace through much of the world at this time. Now, the world was not full of peace. Okay, the world was not a peaceful utopian harmony where everything was good. Romans created peace through might. Occasionally they created peace through, bartering and purchase, but for the most part the Romans, they created peace by taking away everyone else's swords, by killing them with theirs. And it had, so depending on how you look at peace, but much of the world really at this point in time was full of peace. Roman roads had made travel more abundant. Before this, travel was a big deal. Travel was dangerous because nobody was protecting the roads. Travel was, a worrisome time. It also was a huge undertaking if you were going to travel anywhere. If you're going to migrate, immigrate, do all of these things, it was a lot. It was very difficult. So Rome had sort of taken and they had created this massive area, this massive part of the world, and they had brought through rule peace. And they had brought through engineering roads, bridges, all these different ways of connecting various towns. Another thing that's very important is languages had begun to unify. So early on, everybody kind of had their own way of doing it. Everybody had their own language, their own dialect, their own cultural way of communicating. But because we had now started to mass produce through papyrus and through some of the other things, the written word, what happened is languages started to become a little bit more specific. Greek was a major influence. You had the burgeoning languages coming out of Italy at the time. You had Rome, sorry. You had a lot of these different languages that were forming, and you had a lot of languages dying off. Okay, so at the time of Christ, obviously Aramaic was a language that was on the decline. Okay, but you had Arabic, which was a very common language. So you had a lot of these languages that were sort of beginning to move. You had international business that suddenly become commonplace. So you had massive business people coming from all over the world to these huge markets in Rome, to these huge markets in the Middle East where you had huge amounts of movement going on and people were taking money and goods, and you had goods being imported from the vast regions of the world, which nowadays you can get to in like 15 minutes in a fast car, but it seemed like the vast regions of the world. And the other thing that's very important is the East had been reached at this point. So the East was a huge part of this. We had a lot of influence coming in from the East as well. Rome had expanded so far that it had touched the East. So Rome was basically bringing in everybody. So you had this tremendous time of right. And for the first time, the world had become connected. Now we know connectivity on an insane level nowadays, right? Any of you can go find someone in China, someone in Australia, someone in Brazil by 2 o'clock on social media and probably get them to talk to you, right? It's not that hard. You could probably find anybody at any corner of the world, if you so choose, to be friends with. As much as you can be friends through your Twitter handle, but you can be friends. The reality is you can connect, you can basically reach all these spots. So when I say connectivity, it's easy for us in the modern world to go, huh? Because the most common question you hear all the time is, why wouldn't Jesus come back now? Or why wouldn't Jesus come now? Because gosh, he'd be on TV. Well, we all know how much we trust people on TV. Right? First and foremost, very trustworthy people on TV. So we end up with sort of TV, we end up with radio, social media, photography, film. We have all these things. We have satellites telling everybody what's going on. So we have this huge web of information that basically is killing us with just inundated, boom, boom, you can't get quiet. And so the question is always, I hear all the time, is why would he pick them? This is really the first moment in history where everybody had begun to connect, where you had a linkage. So the second way to look at it is what we read in Romans 3:25. It says, God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of his blood to be received by faith. He did this to demonstrate his righteousness because in his forbearance he had left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. In his forbearance, how many of us have had a student loan? How many of us loved forbearance? I'll put my hand up. When I graduate from college, the last thing I want to do is pay those babies back. Right? And man, forbearance is great. Forbearance, you just call them and go, I don't have a job and I don't have any money. And they're like, okay, cool. You don't have to pay them back right now. Right? So you ultimately have to pay them back, or else they haul you off to where. But the patience of God had run its course. It does not mean it run out. Okay, there's a big difference. It had not run out. God's patience didn't run out. But his forbearance, his willingness to allow those things to go long-term unpunished had reached its end. Forbearance has a time frame. You can't apply for eternal forbearance when it comes to your student loans. I totally wish you could. And I was honest. I told everybody I would vote for Bernie Sanders if college was free and he wrote me a refund check. I'll be honest with you, that was my only rule. I will vote for you if you're going to refund me all the money I spent on college. Because there's no reason my kids go for free and I had to pay. So if you want to write me that $180,000 refund check, I will be more than happy. You just bought my vote. No problem at all. I have no scruples. It's my votes are safe. The patience had run its course. So it had reached a point where forbearance had reached its closure point, and Jesus in the midst of all of that was the perfect timing. So like I said, this is the other way of contextualizing perfect timing, okay? There was a plan in place, and the timing of the plan had been considered a perfect point since the beginning. Now, God had made a decision since the beginning to create this moment. So the perfect point being the perfect, as a geometry teacher, the perfect point being the perfect time. And humankind had run out of time to make the law and the mission of God work. So when I get to sort of how I view it and how I sort of put these two things together, is that God's perfect plan was built around both. And that's why it's a perfect plan. So first of all, the world was in position to receive. Now, what I mean by that is simple. The world was now accessible. Up to this point, the world was not accessible. We did not have a major road system. We did not have ways of massive international business travel. We didn't have people from all around the world gathering in these huge marketplaces because they just couldn't get to them. So you had more regional marketplaces. So when you read about the regional nature of business at the time, it really wasn't considered international. You would have an appointee from those regional positions that would then go to the international marketplace. But it really wasn't a place for common people to go and create trade. But because of Rome, it had become this huge place of gathering, and part of that was in Israel, part of that was in Rome, part of that was in various places around Europe. God had put off punishment to those who came before, as we just read, and then God planned to send his son at the perfect moment in time, and the first perfect moment in time. So when we step back and we say, let's talk about perfect moments, when he says at just the right time, Jesus came at the time when the world was accessible, when the gospel could be translated and moved, when languages were understood, when the written word had begun to be a huge part of society, when discussion and discourse was an open thing, when Rome allowed discourse to be positive and possible, when Rome basically protected your travel, when basically the East had connected with Europe and Europe connected to Africa, and you had this massive collection of people, and you had international businessmen who could get saved and then go back to where they had come from. So basically Europe was like one giant New York City. It was basically a little bit of everything mixed in and going back to. And so when we talk about the perfect moment in time, when Paul says at the right time, it's not just simply that we had reached a deadline where God was done forgiving us and he was about to get really mad. That's not what he's saying. He says, listen, at the perfect moment in time. And I've heard people question this moment in time, but the reality is when you look at it, it was the first moment in time when it would have worked. Because he tried it in Eden when he had an audience of one. And it didn't work. The world was never more connected than Eden. Right?
Yeah.
It was one dude. So I need you to get the word out. I'll let everybody know. Right? You know? Had my line. Leo.
Then he gave her a wife.
That's right. Then he gave him a wife and communication system. But that was the whole thing is that, he had a perfect audience of one when he laid down the basic rules and couldn't live by the first two rules and then couldn't live by the next couple of rules, and basically the world had become fragmented. The world had broken off. Tower of Babel, right? The world had broken off. People had been pushed to all the corners. And now he's brought them all back to this one moment, this one place and time where the gospel can be disseminated at a rapid rate. So when we talk about like our lives, right? And we talk about how it works. The reality is paths are clear and accessible. Now, we may not want to acknowledge a path is clear or a path is acceptable in front of us, but it is. In Rome, the roads were available. If you wanted to walk the Roman roads, you walked the Roman roads. One of the craziest things that I still think is one of the marvels of human engineering is if you walk the Appian Way in Rome. Has anybody walked the Appian Way in Rome? It is the original concrete.
Wow.
Yes, we do it so much better now. Right? I mean, they mixed it thick back then, right? I guess they just were thinking that we're never going to run out of dirt. Anyway, but when you walk the Appian Way, it's the original concrete. It's the original. Think about that.
That's cool.
The original concrete. I know it's concrete, probably not really, boiling the blood here, but it's the original. And I've walked on some old stuff, but the original concrete that now bears cars, trucks, skateboarders. I assume. Definitely a lot of scooter riders in Rome. But the reality is sort of this concept of when in Rome, the paths are clear and they're accessible. And people are prepared to hear the gospel. Is how this point in time is set up. People were hopeless, people were hurting, people were struggling, people were going through a lot of stuff. They were in position, and basically there was this moment. And the reality is God has placed you there for this moment. So when you look at your lives, a lot of us, we sit there and we say, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't really think that this, is a big deal. I don't think that, I don't know what, God doesn't really have anything specific for me. Except that you're that person in that moment. Casting Crown said that we're a flower quickly fading, right? I have a plant at my house. I didn't plant it. It was one of those, that they put in with the landscaping when you bought the house, high-end shrub. And I've just been too lazy to tear it out, to be honest with you. I can't stand the stupid thing. But it blooms for like 8 seconds. And it's like March, right? And it's like, flower, right? It's very Casting Crowns, okay? I'm pretty sure they were looking at that shrub when they wrote the song. Because they wrote the whole song as it died. This idea that we're just a flower quickly fading, we don't have a lot of time. So when we step back and we say, let's say, I don't know what the average life expectancy is, somewhere in the mid-70s, I guess now. 75 years in the scope of history. It's not a lot of time. And God picked now to put you here. You have this moment. Now, I'm not saying that your moment is super exciting. I'm not saying your moment is easy. I'm not saying your moment is, maybe you're one of the 1%ers. Whatever. The reality is that God picked this moment for you to have life. And when you step back and you say, I live in the time, the right time. I live in the time that God has put aside for me. We start stepping back and we say, well, there's no time to waste because the time is perfect. Now, it does not mean that anything is perfect in terms of how things go in your life, but your timing is perfect. Your opportunities are perfect because everybody in this room has people in their lives that they can help, care for, reach out to that no one else can. That no one else can do that for. Before Lisa, got really sick yesterday, she went out with this young girl from the school that she's promised to buy clothing for if she graduated. Really that was the hope early on. And so Lisa went out and she ended up getting a couple other teachers to go with her, and they just lavished on this junior high girl. And they bought her, for the first time in her life, someone bought her actual foo-foo lotion. Like she didn't know what to do with it. And she was just like, this is so incredible. I've never had anything like this. And her whole family came out to meet Lisa and these teachers when they took her. And they were just so excited. And and some of the other kids wanted to go because they know Lisa, because they've gone through her classes over the years at Glick. And they wanted to go with her. And, she was like, no, this is her moment. I love you guys, but this is her moment. So she came home and she was like, it was so great. And she goes, but most importantly, it was seeing the look in the other teachers' faces who weren't real big on this. Kids work in the system, whatever their mentality is. But the idea that there was this moment, and it's easy to look back, it's easy to step back sometimes and feel like, what can I do? What does it matter? I feel like a fish out of water. I don't feel like I can fit. I don't feel like whatever. But the reality is, this is the moment for which we have been set aside. And there's the young man on the left of this picture. I try to help you out putting a giant arrow. His name is Kakoa Oke Alani Johnson. And he is one of my favorite kids on earth. And this is not a very flattering picture of him. He is a young man who is in a difficult situation. And his father came to me recently and said, is there any way that you can get my son in Modesto Christian? And I said, you're still gonna have to pay, well, anyway, so we started the process from what's going. And he starts the process, starts going through, well, you have to get recommendations. Okay? So someone's got to write a little letter of recommendation for you. And it has to be teachers.
Can it be you?
Huh? No, it has to be one of your current teachers. Like, fuck you. Anyway, so one of the teachers that he asked to write his recommendation came to him and said, you are not what they're looking for. You are never going to get in there. You are not their thing, and you're wasting their time. So, and he said he's going to call Coach Lima and tell him. Okay? So his dad calls me, this is about a week and a half ago. His dad calls me and he goes, I don't know why this guy wants to call you. And I was like, bro, I don't even know who that guy is. Now, and I'm like, I don't know. Koa goes to Lisa's school. I'm like, I don't know who that guy is. I said, maybe he got my name from Lisa. I don't have a clue. And I said, but if he calls me, I said, we'll square it up pretty quick. And he said, I need my kid there. And I'm like, I know. Because if he doesn't go, he needs to get out. And he's walking down a path, and it's going to be tough for him. And my wife has told me that we will have marital strife if we don't get him there. Okay, she's that worried about him. I'm that worried about him. Well, anyway, so I'm talking to him on the phone. I'm at Travis's baseball game. So I hang up the phone and I go sit down next to Lisa. She goes, what's wrong? And I said, hey, I was just talking to Koa's dad. And, I don't know why this guy wants to talk to me. I don't know who this dude is. But I guess he got a couple of teachers that think he can't do it, and they're being mean to him. And I said, they're gonna call Coach Lima, and I'm gonna tell him straight up, right? And Lisa starts to kind of chuckle. And I go, what's so funny? And she goes, I'm Coach Lima. And I went, huh? She goes, I coach volleyball at school, right? I was like, yes. She goes, I'm the one they're going to talk to. Oh. I'll let you handle this one. Because it didn't even dawn on me. How horrible am I? Right? It didn't even dawn on me. And so, good news is it didn't dawn on his family either. He thought they knew me too. But anyway, she goes, I already dealt with it. And I go, you did? She goes, yeah, I told him to shut up and maybe he needs to retire. And I kind of laughed and I go, help me understand the mentality. And she said, listen, the mentality's tough. She goes, because I see what he sees. She goes, but I also know that as a Christian, he's the kid that needs to be there. She goes, all those other kids that are Christians that come from, middle class, upper middle class, affluent type family, they're gonna get there if they want. She goes, this is the kind of kid we gotta go get. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I am so glad that we are 100% on the same page because this is a big deal. And when I look at this kid, and like I said, he's a goofy looking dude. And I look at this kid and I think, at just the right time, we walked into his life. I don't know why he ever came to play football for me. He came from another organization, never played for me before. Just walked on the field one day. And my heart, just went right out to this kid. He's the kindest, most, just phenomenal guy. I love this kid. And it was like, I don't know where he came from. I don't know how he found out about us. But I got to sit there and I got to work with his family. And then all of a sudden, when the time comes and his dad is prepared and he says, listen, I need to see a change. I'm worried about my son. I got to get him there. And I'm thinking to myself, well, luckily you ran into me. And then you have my wife, who's also well aware of the fact we got to get him. And now all of a sudden you have two people working for you that you never had before. And sometimes I think when we miss these moments, because we think it's just being a good person. Sometimes we think it's just trying to do the right thing. Sometimes we think it's just caring for a kid. But the reality is I look at these moments, and these are the kind of moments that these kids are what get me out of bed every day. Right? It's these moments where you just go, nobody else cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you get run over and you disappear. Nobody cares if you fall into gangs. Nobody cares, and much less some dude that there's no reason you should have ever come across my path. I mean, he lives way over there. Way over there. There's 55 youth football teams between him and me. And he ends up way over there. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, you know what, God? I don't know how you feel necessarily about God orchestrating the actions of non-believers. But all I know is that God either put me there knowing he was heading that way. He just put me there years ahead of time. Or there were people in their lives that guided them in that direction. Because my heart breaks for this kid. And a couple of the kids in that picture too. But it's like, those are the moments where you're sitting there and I'm talking to Lisa and I'm going for it. This is the right time. That he has these two people here. That this girl that Lisa took yesterday had her there. And then Lisa bringing these other teachers alongside. And I think sometimes we miss these moments because I think, sometimes I don't know if it's just that we're not out enough, that we're not focusing enough. I think a lot of times maybe we live the moment and do it and don't realize it. And I go back to what it said, where it says that perseverance develops character and character hope. Character is this Christian, in terms of the Christian version of character, it is this sort of system by which we live. And it's also the system by which we acknowledge what God has allowed us to do as we walk. And sometimes we forget. And we sit there and we say, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And God's laughing and he's going, this because I got you there for this. Just focus. Keep pushing. Keep working. Keep making it happen. And like I said, I'm still don't know how this is going to work out. I know that we're working hard to make it work out. I know that I'm putting in a lot of extra work to make it work out. Because to me, it's like, I look at this kid and I'm afraid he's gone. If we don't. And the reality is we step back and we say, what is that time? And so, I go back to that list and I say, where are the paths in your life clear and accessible? Stop focusing on the work that's been done and focus on what has to be done. Stop focusing on what has already been clear and summed up and start looking at what's there. What are those opportunities? Who are those people in your life that absolutely need you to come in and deliver them? Need you to step in and say, this is the right time. And man, those are the moments that I live for out there with these kids, whether it's baseball or football or school or whatever. Those are the moments, because you just sit there and say, gosh, I'm glad I was here for you. And I was sharing with Lisa the other day, I had a girl walk into my class and she's talking about, she's so stressed out she wants to use drugs, right? She's so stressed out she's actually, I don't know where to get them. I'm thinking, why are you talking to me about this? I'm thinking, am I putting off a bad vibe? The teacher that you're like, oh, you roll in there and talk to him? What's up? I don't know, but she starts just pouring her heart out. And I was like, for the right moment, I guess. I'm glad that I'm that kind of person. You can just come say whatever you want to. You don't stress about it. But we're all like that with people, right? You got people at work that come to you and say, you're somebody I can talk to. You got people in your social networks that you could be the right time for. You got people, in all of these various places. And that's why, what Paul said right here where he says that when we were still powerless, when we were still powerless. Powerless means without ability, influence, or power. We live in a world where billions of dollars a year are spent on helping people feel powerful. Right? Tony Robbins. God bless, I love that man. I do. I feel supercharged. Just listening to his radio commercial. You know? He's like, come to Tony Robbins, you'll be amazing. I'm like, thanks, Tony. Motion is emotion, right? I like Tony. No problem with Tony. But we covet control. We don't accept anybody else making determinations for us. The reality is we live in a world where people are spending billions of dollars a year trying to feel more powerful, more confident, more valuable, more influential. We live in a world where people are starving for that. You know, and we have to remember that while we're feeling powerless, Christ died for us. While we were feeling powerless in that perfect moment, God stepped in. We could not control our own salvation, but that Christ died ultimately for the ungodly. And the ungodly is people that we don't get to pick. It's all of us. We don't get to be choosy and stupid and segregated, and weird. That we're called to be people who look for those moments and say, whose right moment can I facilitate today? You know, what non-Christian kid can I just go pull in today? What friend needs me to pull them in today to bring the message of salvation through the testimony of my actions for them, you know? And it's not easy. It's not. I'll be honest with you, I'm more tired probably on a daily basis than I've ever been my entire life. Because I do too much. And I don't mean that, it's stupid. But I step back and I think to myself, if somehow he is pulled through, then it's worth it. You know, I'll take the high five on graduation day. Chris, high five, right? I'll take it. You know, and I think sometimes we have to step back and remember that at the right time you were put in somebody's life. At the right time, you've been presented with an opportunity for all kinds of people. At the right time, pray for those right times. Look for those right times. Embrace those right times. Don't let those right times slip. That when you see somebody broken and powerless and needs to know what's going on, that you don't let those moments slip away. That you step into those moments and you say, I don't know what I can do, but I will do everything I can. And remember that that's what we're called to do. At the right moment, while they were powerless, Christ died for them. And that's what we're called to do. So I'm going to close in prayer. I'd like to pray for the street family. And we'll receive offering before I forget. And then while the offering's going around, do a few announcements. Father, we thank you so much for this morning, God. First of all, I lift up the street family. I don't know any of the details other than what's happening. And moving on, I can't fathom. God, I don't even know where to begin to process the reality of this. I remember it was just such a young teenager, so full of life, enthusiasm, attitude. God, I lift up that family. I don't bring counselors and friends answers from what I know. God, that's all I know is, God, I pray for our moments, that we are the right moment for somebody. We may be the right moment today. Our lives are the right moment for the people around us right now. Our lives are just in time for somebody, probably today, definitely this week. God, I pray for our awareness. I pray for our discernment. I pray for our focus. I pray for us being aware and awake to what's going on around us. God, I thank you for the wonderful people that do so much here. I thank you for the wonderful people that you bless us with, God. I pray your continued blessing over them. God, I pray your blessing over the offering this morning as we receive it, and your generosity towards us, and the generosity of your people back to you. God, I pray for all those things in you. Amen.